it turned out the Christmas Day games didn't disappoint in terms of overall level of competition, I think is fair to say. And the product that we got to watch over the holidays kind of fell into some ranges that I like to see personally from basketball games that we can talk about. But I'll ask you first, Justin, just what was your thoughts on NBA Christmas Day? Did you get to watch some of the games and what did you think of them?
Yeah, I watched some of the games, checked out mostly in its entirety the Knicks versus the San Antonio Spurs. I was talking to family as well, so that took up the majority of the time, but was able to catch the first game. And Victor Wembanyama, man, he is a phenom. I think the hype is real with him. Just an incredible performance. I do have some ratings notes. I want to read that from Front Office Sports to see if I can get your thoughts as well.
For sure.
So as you know, Matt, all 5 games were decided by 10 points or less. This is all from Front Office Sports, including a last-second win for the Lakers over the Warriors in a game that drew 7.76 million viewers, the league's most watched Christmas Day game since 2019. The controversy, as you know, was the NFL taking this day from the NBA. And a lot of speculation in terms of what's going to happen with the ratings. But the NBA, they held up despite the NFL averaging 24 and about 24 million viewers both games. It was the most streamed NFL games in U.S. history, according to Nielsen. So it seems like those numbers are pretty legit compared to like the Jake Paul fight, in which those numbers are questionable. They're partnered with Nielsen, so that's a lot of credibility there. Get this, and I want to get your thoughts on this. So that this single day, according to Front Office Sports, had such a transformative effect that the league's total viewership decline is now down just to 4% compared to an 18% deficit before Christmas. So I find that really interesting that this day, this has such an impact that it really helped the NBA in terms of viewership. I don't know. I've heard a bunch of thoughts about Christmas Day. So I was happy to see that all the games came down to the wire, that they were competitive. However, it's kind of disheartened. I think it kind of confirmed what's been going on during the rest of the season, just in terms of a lot of players lacking effort and what we're seeing with mediocre basketball. So that was number one. And number two, I was kind of thinking about what Bill Simmons said, and I want your thoughts on this as well in terms of what teams are being showcased on Christmas Day. No OKC, a lot of the younger players not showcased. Bill Simmons brought up Wembanyama, the early game in Madison Square Garden instead of that being maybe the, nightcap game, like showcasing your younger stars. And it's a double-edged sword because Steph and LeBron are super popular. That's a great rivalry. And not only that, to say they're past their prime, I think would be a deep insult. I think they're super high days of being elite players are behind them, but still, they are top 20 players in the league and can perform at an extreme high level, and they showed that. So I think it'd be stupid not to have those guys in a super prime spot, but at the same time, they're not going to be in the league any much longer. So it's a kind of a double-edged sword. So I had conflicting feelings. I think overall it's a huge win for the NBA. I'm glad it turned out the way it did. But at the same time, it kind of raised some more questions in terms of just how this league's going to look in a couple of years.
Yeah, the NBA has not banked well in their future stars, I think is fair to say. Now, we got most of them. I think the main player that was missing that should, well, I guess two. You brought up OKC. The other obvious person is Giannis, who I think Bill Simmons talked about as well. And I think is fair to say that, the NBA has just neglected promoting him as a star, but this also ties in line with wanting those big ratings and having that be the focus to repair the ratings. And so to do that, you go to the big markets. And I think that is almost exactly what you see for Christmas Day games, just plain and simple. I mean, you have Philly versus Boston. Those are big markets. San Antonio, not a big market, but it's paired with New York, which is, I think, the biggest market. And then you, of course, have the California rivalry that you touched on, and Denver versus Phoenix. There's enough talent and big names on those teams that even though those aren't the most giant markets, it had enough cachet to sort of carry that. So I think overall the NBA did a good job here. I would add to what you said because I agree with so much of it. So just to add another element, the NBA did give up footing on times that they air the games. So the prime time spot traditionally was 3:30 p.m. Eastern time, and that is something that since the NFL stepped their big feet into the Christmas Day schedule for the NBA made the business decision, honestly, to kind of step out of the way. There's so many content creators out there that, of course, are dunking on the NBA about that. I think from a business perspective, you do what you do to get the ratings that you can. And I don't think even the most ardent defenders of the NBA and the NBA ratings, etc., would be crazy enough to argue that the NBA ever beats the NFL in terms of ratings. I mean, we all know, at least domestically speaking, the NFL is king in America when it comes to the major sports. So, I think it is what it is. It's telling. I think the comments I was alluding to earlier, of course, LeBron said, I directly referenced the NFL and said, I love the NFL. I love the NFL, but Christmas Day is our day for the NBA. So, kind of false, I guess, depending on what the NFL wants to do. It just kind of owns it. But, long story short, good day for the NBA. Great competitive games. I mentioned to you and our friends that I like to see games less than 120 points. And like you said, within 10, it's usually a pretty good sign in an NBA game nowadays that it's a good competitive game. And was really kind of shocked by how much the 76ers brought it. That was one thing that I think was a huge story. They wanted to prove it in terms of what they were capable of doing by taking out the Celtics, and what do you know, worked out pretty well for them.
Yeah, no, it's true. And I think it's going to be interesting next year. Another wrinkle is just this media rights deal. So how are these games going to be distributed? On Amazon, on NBC. Like how's this going to work with new networks in the mix? I mean, we just don't know, and that takes time for viewers to change their habits. So we'll have to see. I don't recall if ESPN just has the rights to Christmas, all the way through this media rights deal. But if that does get changed, I mean, that's another wrinkle in terms of how their viewership is going to play out.
Yeah, I guess what I'll say about LeBron's comments is I like to see that sense of pride and
Yeah.
competition, even if there is on a rating scale no competition.
Yeah.
That taps into like something was hit on his pride and maybe a lot of the players and stars' pride that they wanted to have this great Christmas day. And so we need to see that just translate further down the line into the regular season, have this be a more consistent thing. And you could get the narrative that maybe the ratings are on the rise. So I don't know. Maybe there's something to that this, kicked up a little bit more interest for the players to get out there and have a great competition. So I'll keep my comments very positive as far as how it all went down.
No, agreed. I'll make one more point. I do agree with Bill Simmons. I think he's right about this. Christmas Eve is open. Like, why don't you use that day as well? That's had a lot of availability. So, there's a lot of evolution that could take place. We mentioned just there's been a lot of discussion in terms of kind of the NBA has been known for kind of change, but it's been also a stubborn league as well in terms of evolution. I think it should look at its scheduling as well. Besides adding in like an in-season tournament, maybe switching, using some different holidays just to showcase the league.
Yeah, and I think even like the midday slot on Christmas Eve, a lot of people have work off on Christmas Eve day. A lot of people have less engagements like middle of the day, Christmas Eve day. I know that's the case for me compared to Christmas Day, where you usually maybe are spending that time with family, loved ones, etc. So I totally agree. And I think, you're never going to compete going head to head against the juggernaut that is the NFL in terms of those rating slots. But I do think there's a little case that there's a big enough pie out there that you can interest viewers as well. So you can also hedge your bets maybe on airing during halftime or fourth quarter-ish of the NFL games. I mean, the two NFL games, interestingly enough, which shows, again, how powerful the NFL is, they weren't great games that happened on Christmas Day. We're not going to get into football analysis here, but the NBA product was a lot more competitive that day compared to the NFL. You just see how much of a juggernaut that league is. So yeah, I agree to your point, and Bill Simmons' point. I think experimenting with what other times you can take up and kind of own is a valuable thing. So let us know your guys' thoughts about Christmas Day. Did you enjoy it? Did you watch it? And maybe what was your favorite matchup of the day?